We are live.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Blanton,
Present.
Dr. Bullock,
Present.
Dr. Dempsey,
Present.
Dr. Fleming,
Present.
Ms. Janeski, Dr. Graham,
Present.
Dr. Houston,
Present.
Dr. Locklear, Dr. Marr, Dr. Miller,
Present.
Dr. Penfield, Superintendent Truitt,
Present.
Ms. Floyd,
Present.
Dr. Holland,
Present.
Dr. Weddington,
Present.
Dr. Wood,
Present.
Mr. Smith,
Present.
Mr. Patton.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome commission members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, and online listeners to the May 12th, 2022 monthly meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. This commission develops and recommends to the State Board of Education rules related to all aspects of educator preparation programs and licensure. My name is Patrick Miller, and I am the chair of the Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. I now call this meeting to order. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website, www.ncpublicschools.org, on the SBE meetings link. The meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the eBoard agenda. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Commission members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this commission. Does any member of the commission know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Commission members, you have had an opportunity to review the proposed agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the May 12th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
All right. Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? The agenda has been approved. Thank you. The minutes from our previous commission meeting on March 10th, 2022 have been prepared and made available to you. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes. Chris?
Thanks, Chris. We have a motion by Chris and a second from Sam to approve the minutes from March 10, 2022. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Now, Dr. Kim Evans will present the DPI and State Board of Education updates. Dr. Evans.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that the 6 updates that are listed on our agenda today will not be presented due to time and just that we had we decided not to have an April meeting. So some of these are older updates from the state board. I do want to note that LICN 006, 002, and 001 are now in state board policy. So they have been approved by the state board. And then feel free to look at the rest of the updates. And if you do have any questions, please reach out to me and I will assist you with that. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Evans? Thank you, Dr. Evans. Commission members, as you may know, I am retiring as superintendent of Greene County Schools effective June 30th. My current appointment to PEP-C expires in August, and because I'm retiring, I am not eligible to be reappointed. Additionally, Dr. Michael Marr has decided to relinquish his seat as vice chair of PEP-C. Therefore, this morning, we need to elect a new chair and vice chair. The newly elected chair and vice chair will assume their responsibilities in September. Today's voting protocol will be as follows for each PEP-C office, which are chair and vice chair. First, I will open the floor for nominations. Nominations will be recorded by Dr. Evans in the order they are made. A motion will be made to close the floor, and we'll vote on that motion. After the nominations are voiced and the floor has been closed, I will initiate a roll call vote for each candidate in the order the nominations were received. Dr. Evans will then call the roll and capture those votes for each office, and the final count will be announced. Any questions before we get started? Hearing none, I now open the floor for nominations for chair of PEP-C.
Chairman Miller,
Yes, sir.
I would like to nominate Dr. Van Dempsey for chair.
Thank you, Sam. Are there others? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the floor?
I'll make that motion also.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have a second to close the floor?
I second. It's Catherine Truitt.
Thank you, Superintendent Truitt. There has been a motion and a second to close the floor for nominations for chair of PEP-C. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, the floor is closed. So I would say that by default, Dr. Dempsey, do you accept the nomination?
I'm honored and I do.
Thank you, Dr. Dempsey. We'll vote for the purposes of procedure, I guess. So Dr. Evans, will you call the roll so that we can stick
Sure.
to the procedure?
Dr. Blanton,
Just need.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Yes.
There you go.
Dr. Bullock,
Pat, I just want to be clear what am I voting again for Van or am I voting for something else?
We are voting in support of Van's nomination as chair.
Okay. Yes.
Dr. Dempsey,
Yes.
Dr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Graham,
Yes.
Dr. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Superintendent Truitt,
Yes.
Ms. Floyd,
Yes.
Dr. Holland,
Yes.
Dr. Weddington,
Yes.
Dr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
We have unanimous yeses.
All right, thank you, Dr. Evans. At this point, I open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Mr.
I
Chair,
would like
this
to
is
make another
Catherine Truitt.
nomination, please. Oh,
Okay,
excuse me.
Go ahead, Sam.
I'd like to nominate Dean Randy Penfield for vice chair.
all right, we've got Randy Penfield, Superintendent Truitt. Did you want to nominate someone?
I would like to nominate Aaron Fleming.
Okay, are there others? We have Randy Penfield and Aaron Fleming. Do I have a motion to close the nominations for vice chair?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the floor for accepting nominations for vice chair of Pepsi. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, Dr. Evans, I think we'll start with Dr. Penfield if we are voting on each candidate in the order the nominations were received.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Blanton,
Yes.
Dr. Bullock,
No.
Dr. Dempsey,
Yes.
Dr. Fleming,
I'll stay out of voting.
Dr. Graham,
No.
Dr. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Superintendent Truitt,
No.
Ms. Floyd. I believe I saw Ms. Floyd leave the meeting. Dr. Holland,
No.
Dr. Weddington,
No.
Dr. Wood,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
and Mr. Patton.
Yes.
All right, now we will vote on Dr. Fleming.
Dr. Blanton,
No.
Dr. Bullock,
Yes.
Dr. Dempsey,
No.
Dr. Graham,
Yes.
Dr. Houston,
No.
Dr. Miller,
No.
Superintendent Truitt,
Yes.
Dr. Holland,
Yes.
Dr. Weddington,
Yes.
Dr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Evans, can you announce the totals, please?
Yes, Dr. Fleming had 8 yeses, and Dr. Penfield had 5 yeses.
Okay, so Dr. Fleming is elected as vice chair, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we will formally announce that Dr. Van Dempsey will take over as chair of Pepsi, and Dr. Aaron Fleming will take over the role of vice chair effective September of 2022. Congratulations, gentlemen. And I also say my condolences. Anyway. I'm just joking. At this point, we'll move on in the agenda, and Dr. Evans will present policy amendments for LICN 003 for discussion and action.
Sure. Before that, Dr. Miller, we just want to make sure that Dr. Fleming is good with the nomination.
Okay, Dr. Fleming, are you good? I hope so, because you've been elected.
Well, I will accept, and I appreciate that, but I was not expecting that today. So
Congratulations.
I will say thank you, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Congratulations
Yeah,
to you, Dr. Benson.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm going to go through a policy amendment for LICN 003. So the first part of the policy amendment is clarification for the pedagogy assessment, because this came to our attention from the field, and then also 4 vendor updates or 4 different tests from ETS praxis. So the first part of the amendment is renaming section 3 to the pedagogy assessment requirement instead of focusing on the PLT, because that's what that section is named at this time, which causes confusion around what test is accepted for the pedagogy assessment. And then we're also going to remove the text that talks about when the PLT can be accepted. Or if you're exempt from the PLT, if you take EdTPA or PPAT, which all of this has caused confusion in the field. And so instead, we are going to replace that text with letting the field know that the pedagogy assessment can be fulfilled by either the EdTPA or the PPAT, so those 2 assessments, and then that the PLT, or the Principles of Learning and Teaching assessment, may only fulfill the requirement of the pedagogy assessment if the following conditions are met: that the EPP that the individual is enrolled in, that they do not support the PPAT, because the PPAT is a general test and can be used for any licensure area. And there is no EdTPA workbook for the candidate's licensure area at the time that that candidate is admitted to the EPP. So we just want to have that clarification of when the PLT is accepted. And at this time, the PLT, the workbooks are only missing for a handful of CTE licensure areas. So this would only focus on those handful of CTE licensure areas. But we wanted to have that clarification in there until those are available, and make it clear that this would be at the time that the candidate is admitted to the EPP. Because, for instance, if I was admitted to an EPP and there was no EdTPA workbook for my CTE area, licensure area, then I would go ahead and take the PLT, go ahead and pass that. But then by the time before I graduated, they did have the EdTPA workbook. Then would I have to go back and take the EdTPA? Well, this makes it clear that it's when I'm admitted to the EPP. So we just wanted that clarification in there as to what tests are accepted for that requirement, and then the clarification around PLT and when that is accepted. Any questions around this part first?
Kim, this is Ann. Is there an example of a licensure area where this would be?
So right now, it's a handful of only the CTE.
Okay, gotcha.
Areas.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So it would be the CTE areas.
Okay.
Does that help, Ann?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Appreciate that.
Yes, sure. Any other questions? And then our 4 vendor updates are for the Praxis Biology test, the Earth Science test, the Science Comprehensive test, and the School Psychology test. So I just want to note for all of these tests because these are the current test codes, that you'll see differences in the cut scores, but that has nothing to do with the drop in standards. It focuses on the change in the number of test items and how difficult those particular items for the updated test will be. So the first test is the biology test 5235, and that current cut score is 150, and it's effective until August 31st, 2023. So the updated test code will be 5236. The cut score will increase to 154, and the effective beginning date will be September 2022. And moving on to the earth science test, this is the current test code is 5571. The cut score is 136, and it's also effective until August 31st, 2023. And then for the updated test, that new code is 5572. The cut score increased to 154, and then the effective date will begin September 2022. For the comprehensive science test, which is currently 5435, that current cut score is 151, and it's effective until August 31st, 2023 as well. The updated test code is 5436, and that cut score is 141. So this is the only test where the cut score dropped, and the effective beginning date is also September 2022. And then the last test is the school psychology test. Currently is 5402. The cut score is 147, effective until August 31st, 2023. And that updated test code is 5403. The cut score will increase to 155, and the effective beginning date is September 2022. Any questions about these 4 updates? Yes, Dr. Chamberlain. Tom, are you muted?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Evans. I just want to check on this slide in front of us here. Most of your other ones had September 2023 as the effective beginning. This one says September 2022. Is that when the test will be available?
So 2023 is for the current test to be effective until, but the effective beginning date is September 2022 for the updated test for all 4 of them.
And so my understanding is we will follow our normal procedure of we will accept either test. Once the new test comes online and is available, it will be accepted, or the current test will be accepted until August 31st, 2023. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. My other comment, and this is just a comment, these are not the same tests. So when we talk about the cut score changes. It does not increase or decrease because it's not on the same scale. Because when we use that kind of language, it sends the signal that the standard may be rising or falling, and we don't want to convey that information to the field. This is a different test with a different scale, so there's not a direct comparison between those 2 cut scores.
Thank you, Dr. Chamberlain, for that clarification. Any questions?
Do we need to vote on this morning, Dr. Evans, or is this just?
Yes, this is for voting.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve these changes to LIC N001?
It's 003.
3, sorry.
Can I ask clarification?
Yes, sir.
What Tom said.
Dr. Houston?
I'm trying to determine if the cut score issue, are you saying one set of tests is, they equate as far as difficulty? I guess that's what I'm asking. They equate as far as difficulty is concerned. even though the scores will, as I think I understood what you said, will be different.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the revision of the test maintains the level of difficulty for passing the test, but this is just an artifact of their scaling that the actual cut score changes because of the nature of the test. So
Okay.
it should not be construed as an increase or decrease in the cut score. It is a change in the cut score for that particular test.
I thought that's what you said, and I just thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
All right, do we have a motion to approve these changes?
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Houston. Do we have a second?
Craig, I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the policy amendments for LICN 003. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Dr. Evans, and I believe we'll hear from Dr. Tomberlin next. He will present policy amendments on LICN 001.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. So the first policy recommendation is a change to 120F, adding teacher areas to existing teacher licensure. So this is we're getting some interesting interpretation of this. So it requires clarification. So there are 4 ways that one can satisfy the requirement to add a license. The first is completing an approved Ed Prep program in that additional area. 2, satisfying the State Board of Education required exam. This is for people who currently hold a license and are adding another one. And 3, completing 24 semester hours in the subject area with a grade of C or better in each course. And then the 4th one is specifically related to foreign language instruction and American Sign Language and deaf of hearing and hearing. So there's some different tests that relate to that. So the issue has been, the policy says through any one of the following, and there are some subject areas out there that do not have a State Board of Education exam. There are very few of them, but so that's option 2. Where that exists, we've had some people claim that since the test doesn't exist, they can choose that, and then they would not have any requirements for holding the license. And so this is to clarify that they need one, and as you see up above, it says any of the following, and so we're saying now one of the following. And then the note below says, for a teacher in an area that does not have a North Carolina State Board required exam, the individual must complete one of the above options to add on additional teaching areas to clear the license. So in other words, if there's not a subject area test in that particular license area, then they would either need to do an Ed Prep program to add that additional area or show that they had 24 semester hours in that area. And that is the policy recommendation, rather than allowing folks to add license areas without any requirement. And I think...
This is Ann. I have a question. Are you through with that part?
Yes.
I just want to be clear, because I know this is a process that happens, that they can, with this requirement, they can add it to an initial license. Because so if I'm in a traditional teacher prep program and I'm doing a elementary license and I want to add on middle school math and I take the test, that's under this policy, because it says a clear license in here. So that's alwa't been accepted. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding the definition of the clear license. And that first under 1.20F.
Who holds a clear teaching license. In general, we have recognized IPLs as being clear because, so this is a great question, Dr. Bullock. So this This language goes back to the time when we required teachers to pass all their content and pedagogy exams prior to entering the classroom. So we need to clarify what clear teaching license means in this case. If you're an IPL who has not passed his or her examinations, is that clear? I don't know. And so I think you're raising a very important point here that we have traditionally issued these to IPLs with the caveat that the add-on license is conditional on the base license. So in other words, in the scenario you described, I added on middle school math, and for some reason I did not meet the requirements to hold the license for the elementary, then the add-on would be in jeopardy because the base license is in default. That is the way we usually interpret this, but you're raising a very interesting point. Does clear suggest that they've passed the testing requirements for that license, or can you have an IPL where you've not met those requirements? I think we may need to clarify that.
Yeah, the other thing is if they take on, if they're, again, same scenario, Tom, and they take 24 credits. So say, remix, I'm an elementary person, but I take 24 credits in middle school math. Do I still have to test?
The answer to that question is no. That you would have met the requirement to add on the license through 24 semester hours.
Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be that needs to be clear in here. So maybe y'all, now that the word clear has come up, that maybe rethinking about this in terms of that language might be helpful.
That's great feedback, and we really appreciate it. And so, Dr. Miller, I think we need to consider this just for discussion. And that's okay because we're putting some options in front of you, and that's going to require some discussion as well.
Yes.
So we don't have a clear policy recommendation for you on the next item. So it's probably best that we get this feedback from Pepsi and come back with this particular policy recommendation. So the second issue deals with the lifetime license. So this is coming up quite a bit across the state, and that's the question of, for a teacher in their last renewal cycle before they anticipate qualifying for a lifetime license, does that individual need to do the continuing education credits in that renewal cycle? So the law is very clear here that one must hold a current license, so it cannot be expired. And so the question keeps coming up, can I not do the CEUs in my last renewal period and then convert that license to a lifetime license, which does not require any continued CEUs? So we've thought about this and we see some pros and cons to each. So we want to lay out those pros and cons to you and these two options that we're proposing. So option one, an individual who plans to convert his or her continuing professional license to a lifetime license will not be required to complete continuing education credits for the renewal period immediately preceding the conversion to a lifetime license. If the individual fails to meet the requirements to hold a lifetime license, the individual's license shall expire and the required CEUs must be completed in advance of reinstating the license. So that's to give them maximum flexibility. So they can choose not to do that. But if they wind up not qualifying for the lifetime license, then the license will expire and they would have to do those CEUs in advance of reinstating the license for the purposes of getting the lifetime license. Option two says an individual who plans to convert his or her continuing professional license to a lifetime license must complete CEUs for the renewal period immediately preceding the conversion to a lifetime license. So yes, you have to do in your last renewal period, you still have to do those CEUs in advance of getting a lifetime license. So the pros and cons of this come down to what we're concerned about with option one is teachers may assume that they're going to qualify for a lifetime license, but there are requirements prescribed in law, And so we really want to avoid the possibility that people come and they didn't know weren't going to qualify, or they thought they were going to qualify, and then in the end they don't meet the requirements, and then their license has expired. But this gives them some flexibility. We see the point of, they're getting ready to go on a continuing license that doesn't require CEUs. They've had around 30 years of experience in the field. We can see that as being an option as well. The second option ensures that nobody makes a mistake here. You do your CEUs in the last cycle, and then you can convert, and then you no longer have to do CEUs. So those are the two options we've put together and I hope I've explained the pros and cons of them well enough, and we would like your feedback. It would be our preference to bring you one recommendation rather than options. So,
Floor is open.
This is Wesley. How much concern or questions have you gotten related to this? I mean, is it a big magnitude, or is it just a handful of questions about this?
So that's a great question. It is just a handful at this point, but the lifetime license we feel like is not really kind of permeated the field yet. There are, we've got a limited number relative to the number who would be eligible for this. We're getting some limited requests for this license. So our thinking is as this becomes more and more common knowledge in the field, this issue is going to continue to come up.
I agree. I think, educating people on, the lifetime license is very important. I think what we're seeing, in our areas, folks that, plan on retiring and just want to go ahead and secure a lifetime license just in case they decide to return to education. And many of those cases they already have, the 30 years, there's no issues. But I do agree with you that, with people not being educated about it, option 2 kind of sounds a little better at this point. But I do like the idea of option 1 as well. So tough decision on that.
Yeah. So just to clarify for everyone here, the two ways you do this, or you can have 30 years of credible service so you hold an active license and you have 30 years in the retirement system. Or option 2, you've worked 30 years employed as a licensed educator in public schools. So the second one's easy. We can confirm that at DPI. The first one, we cannot confirm. So that's where we're concerned that people may not realize that some of their service may not be credible with teasers, and they're thinking, I've got what I need, but they're not. But because we can't verify that for them, that's where we can't help them with any misunderstanding. So there's this piece of this that DPI has no control over and can't really advise folks properly as to whether they will qualify or not.
Tom, I think the current procedures right now that's advertised on DPI's website is just the 30 years of service. It doesn't mention anything about CEUs, correct?
That's right. It doesn't address this issue of whether you have to have the CEUs in the last renewal period.
Those folks have submitted as of right now for lifetime license that did not hold the CEUs for renewal credit, but had the 30 years, they will be approved at this point for a lifetime license.
I'd have to check with Susan Ruiz, but my understanding is that is our position right now, and but it has been raised by operations as to what the policy related to this issue is. So we're giving them the benefit of the doubt right now, but it does need to be resolved in policy.
Gotcha.
Hey, Tom, this is Ann again. I have another question about this one.
Sure.
So it says in here that they have to be in a public school unit. So for EPP faculty or administrators who have kept their license and have done service to the state, but in a different role, are they not eligible for this?
If they have the credible service with teasers, they would meet the qualification, and they maintained their license. So they did the continuing education credits. They would qualify. But if they don't have teasers credit, then no, they would not qualify. Because this doesn't extend to public universities, except working in laboratory schools.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So if I've worked in a state institution for 36 years, I mean, I taught in public schools or whatever, or I was a principal, or as Patrick Miller, less than 30 years, but he has more. And I was a superintendent, and then I moved to a university system. I couldn't, if it was less than 30 years and I was a faculty member, I can't keep my license as a lifetime license. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what the law is saying. Correct.
Okay.
So Tom, to follow up on Ann's question, this means 30 years of continuing to maintain the license plus engaged in practice in a school.
It is not an and, it's an or. So technically, technically I could work for, let's say, the Department of Transportation in the state of North Carolina for 25 years. And then I can decide I'm going to get a teaching license and I'm going to teach in a school for 5 years. That person would have 30 years of creditable service with teasers. And then they would also hold a current license, and they would qualify for a lifetime license.
So Tom, this is Aaron. I've got, so if someone had a license at any point during their 30 years with the state, and this goes back to Ann's question, and they go into a UNC system school, since they're still in teasers, why would they not be able to get the lifetime license? And I think that might be similar to what Ann was asking.
So my assumption in Dr. Bullock's question was that person was moving to a university that did not participate in teasers.
Oh, okay. Right. Private, yeah, I got you.
And that assumption was probably born from the fact that Dr. Bullock is a private institution.
Right, ask the question, I got you.
Maybe I made a wrong assumption there.
I'm not, that's not my question. My question would be if I were still at East Carolina University. So if I were at a state school that talked about that, and I was involved, and I was in the retirement system with the state, right? Would I hold my license if I've kept my license up? I mean, it's the same question for DPI, right? Like, so if I'm somewhere and then I go work for DPI, if I'm in the system and I keep my license up, could I keep a lifetime license?
Yeah, the answer to that question is yes. Is if you've got a current license and you've got 30 years of creditable service in teasers, then yes, you would qualify. I'm sorry, my interpretation was I had 25 years as a licensed educator, and then the last 5 years I moved to a private university, which did not contribute to teasers. At the end of that 5 years, at the end of my 30 years total of service as a licensed teacher, would I qualify? And the answer to that question is no. Because you wouldn't meet either one of these requirements.
Yes, that I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
And that makes perfect sense. Thanks for clarifying that, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, do you need us to decide on an option today? I know we're not voting on this, approving the policy amendments, but would you like us to decide on option 1 or 2 today? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's at the will of if you're okay with me bringing back next month 2 options that you're going to vote on, I'm fine with that. That's not usually how we do things, but there's nothing to prevent us from doing it that way.
Does the commission have an opinion? Do you want to make a decision on option 1 or 2 today so that Tom brings us back a finalized policy to consider next month? Or do you want to think about it and vote on the options next month?
This is Ann. I like the option idea, and just because I think it allows us to think through different scenarios. So options ideas next month is what I like, but one person.
That's a suggestion from Dr. Bullock, is to keep the options in, if I understand you right, and vote on them next month. Is that correct?
Yep, Patrick, this is Van, and maybe Tom can help me with this. It seems to me we're deliberating two issues. One is the person's immediately prior experience. So this question about the CEUs just before they convert to a lifetime license. So one question is about that. Another question is about, in this 30 years that is the run-up to this decision, that they could have spent a predominant amount of that time not directly engaged in some kind of professional practice, and then at the end of that experience, they're in teaching, and then they're eligible. Am I interpreting what you say correctly?
So you are interpreting the allowance, the qualification, like either whether it's on the front end or the back end. If somebody spent 5 years in teaching and then went to the Department of Transportation and spent the next 25 years, but they maintained that license throughout, then they would qualify for the lifetime license. But that's not a matter that's under the purview of Pep-C. That's the statute.
Okay.
The statute allows that possibility.
For the sake of the question, that is to me a more troubling coupling of things. That a person could have taught 25 years ago, left the classroom, done something in an agency that has nothing to do with education, but because of that 5 years back then, they're eligible for a lifetime license. But if that's in statute, then obviously we have to resolve that a different way.
Right.
But I agree with Ann's point. I think some continued discussion before we vote would be helpful.
I'm fine with that. Moving forward, is there anyone who has an opposing opinion to carrying the options forward to next month? All right, Tom, I don't hear any opposition to that idea. So let's, when you bring this policy back next month, please bring it with these two options. And it sounds like the commission will make a decision at that time.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you. Any last questions for Dr. Tomberlin on this issue? Hearing none, thank you, Dr. Tomberlin. At this point, we'll hear from the co-chairs from each of our subcommittees, and they will provide an update on the work that has been done. And we'll start with prep and entry, Dr. Dempsey, Dr. Weddington.
Thank you, Chairman. I will go first, and then Hank can chime in with any additional thoughts. At our most recent meeting, we really organized our discussion both as a whole group and in breakout groups around basically using License 3 as an anchor point and understanding the current expectations for EPPs and their and people who complete an EPP program, how that then articulated out into other licenses, predominantly, mainly 1 and 2. So we looked at, we discussed, and it was a great discussion, a robust discussion in the breakout groups and the whole group, how the connections between License 1 and License 2 sit within a pathway that is either with and or through an EPP. So this connection, how EPPs are connected to that and how they are parallel to the expectations for an EPP. The pathway through to License 4 relative to the standards and expectations that are built into the License 3 access point in the pathway, and that connects to the EBPs. The accountability expectations for the collaboration or partnership between EBPs and PSUs who are engaged in License 1 and License 2 support. So what does the accountability structure for that look like? And then the fourth point that we discussed was, what do we mean by EPP in North Carolina right now? What does that mean in terms of traditional EPPs? What does that mean in terms of non-traditional EPPs? And then within that discussion, what's potential innovation there? How can we think about ways of building some agility into how EPPs are involved in these different, structured to be involved in these different licensure points? Hank, did I capture the crux of it?
I think that was the sentiment of the discussion.
Thanks.
Any questions for the co-chairs of preparation and entry? All right, thank you, Dr. Dempsey and Dr. Weddington. We'll move to licensure, Dr. Bullock and Dr. Wood.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'll start, and Ann, you can jump in as well. But basically, our minutes are available for you guys to read all the additional details. But we talked a little bit about what does the term proficient mean as we're looking at the peer process. Does that mean proficient on a summative evaluation? Does that mean proficient through multiple observations through the year, or is there another meaning of proficient? We also talked about under License 4 and License 5, each of those, our current draft form indicates there's obligations for individual teachers of things they have to perform, such as open their classroom for observations or conducting peer observations. And we talked about whether that should be an obligation or an option for teachers at those levels. We also talked about a minute detail, but it's also very important under License 4, the current title is expert. And we talked about that in many cases, a teacher may only have 5 years experience, and are they really expert teachers at that point in time? And do we need to think about rephrasing that title to that license area? We also talked about under License 4, do we want to consider, or should we consider certifications or endorsements for the advanced teacher, classroom excellence, and the adult leadership, or should that really be a whole separate, different level of licensure? And then also one of the hot topics was, once again, the role of the EPP, and should candidates in those first levels of licensure have to go through an EPP during that process. So those were some of our major talking points, and feel free to add some additional content as well.
Yeah, thanks, Wesley. That was great. I would just add one thing, that we also just started a discussion on how we can leverage the benefits of going through a traditional EPP at the whatever license level where that jumps in. But I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Any questions for Dr. Bullock or Dr. Wood? Hearing none, I don't know if has Dr. Marr joined the meeting, or is Ms. Stover on to give
Ms.
us?
Stover is on. Ms. Stover is on.
Good morning, Ms. Stover.
Good morning, Dr. Miller. So for advancement and development, at our last meeting, we had an opportunity to also discuss EPPs and the roles that EPPs will be able to play across the spectrum of licensure, from the apprentice licensure all the way through the adult leadership licensure. We also had an opportunity to kind of look at a way to maybe change the current infographic to make it just a little bit clearer to teachers in the field and people who have not been part of the subcommittee work as they're looking at that infographic. So we kept the same stair-step tier up to the license 4, but for the 4+ classroom excellence and for the 4+ adult leadership, we moved those over onto the side and labeled those as advanced credentialed opportunities, along with APs and district office jobs, just to kind of help teachers who are looking at that model understand that those would be additional roles that you would take on as an expert teacher after you've reached the License 4 level. We also had an opportunity to talk about career status and the importance of protecting the career status for the teachers who do have career status in our state. So we did do a vote to say that the work that we are doing as part of advancement and development would be looking to change the current statute around the licensure, and we would not be looking to change the statute that is a career status rules. And we also had an opportunity to really kind of dig in and look at what our roles and responsibilities are as the Advancement and Development Subcommittee to determine if there's any changes that need to be made in the current draft model that are related to our roles and responsibilities, and then also took some time to determine if there was any feedback that we needed to pass to other subcommittees. As we move into our work next month, we are going to begin looking at specific core competencies that teachers would need to have at each one of the licensure levels, and then determine how teachers would move between each one of the different licensure levels.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Stover. Are there any questions for her? Hearing none, we'll move into budget and compensation. Dr. Graham, Dr. Fleming.
Good morning. At our most recent meeting on May the 2nd, the committee addressed national board certification pay and master's pay in the compensation model. The subcommittee discussed these issues and formally voted to explicitly state in our recommendation that the subcommittee will recommend continuation of national board certification pay and master's pay for those individuals who are currently receiving master's pay supplements in their salary. We also had Alexis Schaus visit with us, and she led a discussion on the hold harmless provisions. We'll continue to have conversation and come up with direction on what to do with respect to the hold harmless provision. And we also noted that there would be 8 regional conversations throughout the month of May, and the subcommittee definitely wants to ensure that there are questions embedded within those discussions relative to the compensation model so we can receive feedback that we can then leverage and integrate into the work that we're doing. So those are some of the high level pieces. Dr. Fleming, anything you'd like to add that I may have overlooked?
No, I believe you have captured it all well, and I think it's worth noting again, reiterating that the fact that while it may be outside the realm of our committee, that our subcommittee, that national board and master's pay is something that the subcommittee does overwhelmingly support. Keeping in the model. And so I know that was the bulk of our conversation during our meeting. So thank you, Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming. That's it for us.
Okay, any questions for budget and compensation? Hearing none, Dr. Graham, I know you mentioned the regional meetings that are coming up. We'll keep our eyes out for those and hope that they garner some positive feedback that we can use to further refine and improve our proposal. Would also like to ask co-chairs to try to make the changes that are going to be needed to the things that your subcommittee works on in the next couple months, so that by the end of the summer or early fall, we can bring the model to PEP-C for you all to begin to consider finalizing that, voting it out, and sending it to the state board for their consideration. So if you would just kind of keep that timeline front and center, it would be most appreciated. Thank you, commission members, advisors, and staff for your preparation for today's discussions. I would remind commission members that our next monthly meeting will be held on Thursday, June 9th from 9 to 12. We have now completed our meeting, and unless there is additional business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right, we have a motion and had two motions, so I'll assume that one of those was a second to adjourn. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.